Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stephen King Cast, one man's musings on the works of Stephen King. Each week I'll review the works of Stephen King in the chronological order of publication, is what I used to say once upon a time, back during the days when I had started out on this journey and was doing just that, reviewing the works of Stephen King, one chronological episode at a time in the publication history. But I did that, everyone. I did that. I completed that journey. But much like Ka, we are on a wheel, and Ka is a wheel. This podcast is a wheel. We continue on, and so I still keep myself fully entrenched in the world of Stephen King, and still like to talk about different aspects of the Stephen King universe. I recently just published an episode detailing my thoughts on the first 3 episodes of Welcome to Derry on HBO Max, and what I'm doing this episode is discussing my thoughts on the recent publication of Joe Hill's latest book, King Sorrow. Why am I talking about a book published by not Stephen King on something called the Stephen King Cast? Well, it's within the Stephen King family, isn't it? Because as you may know, Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, and I have talked about most of the works of Joe Hill in previous episodes on this podcast, which you can find in earlier episodes. And there are a lot of reasons why I want to talk about King Sorrow. This will not be an in-depth critical review or analysis of King Sorrow. What it's going to be is, like I said, my thoughts. I want to share my thoughts on this book, my relationship with this book, and why you should go out and check out this book. And if you have any thoughts on King Sorrow, write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. I would love to be able to read your opinions on this latest publication, on upcoming episodes of the Stephen King Cast. Also, if you are hopping online to do that, head on over to iTunes and please leave a review. That will greatly help out. Like I said in my last episode, I talked about the first 3 episodes of It, Welcome to Derry. If you have any thoughts on It, Welcome to Derry, feel free to write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com, or if you have just any thoughts related to any of the works of Stephen King, whether it be Never Flinch, thoughts about the upcoming third part of the Talisman story, if you saw The Long Walk, what you think about that, if this has come out after The Running Man has come out by Edgar Wright, do you have any thoughts on that? Anything in the world of Stephen King, don't hesitate to reach out so I can read your thoughts on an upcoming episode. Okay, so all right, everyone, let me talk about King Sorrow, the latest book by Joe Hill. So when I first heard about it, and the premise that these college kids make a deal not with a devil but with a dragon, and that the deal requires them to sacrifice a person every year, or else it's going to come for them, I was like, okay, that's a pretty killer premise. But I will say that my expectations were tempered. I was looking forward to it, but if this was, for instance, Joe Hill's follow-up to Horns, or even his follow-up to Nosferatu, I would have jumped out of my skin in the anticipation of it. I was pretty lukewarm on The Fireman. I thought it was okay. I probably should reread it. But man, that book seems like it came out a million years ago. And how I felt about that, I think played a role in me not being as excited for King Sorrow as maybe I should have been. Regardless, I was counting down the days. I ordered it. And I was mad when it didn't get here on time, so it showed up the day after publication. So I was still looking forward to it, and there's just something to be said about getting a massive, weighty murder weapon of a book from a favorite author, a book with a killer premise. So, In the days leading up to Halloween, I cracked it open and began reading. I enjoyed it at first. Then I found that I couldn't put it down. And then, I realized that call it hooks. It had its hooks in me. Say that dragon claws had been embedded within me. It had me, and I was enjoying it. But then something happens. I'm not going to spoil it yet. But something happens halfway through the story. There is about a 100-page sequence that happens to take place on an airplane that changed this book from enjoyable to a must-read to holy shit, I've never experienced something like this while reading before. Joe Hill provided something entirely new to me. And he doesn't rest on his laurels, because the next segment of the book is equally thrilling in unexpected ways. And then the sequence after that is a complete shift and gives you something new. And the book never remains in the place where you expect it to be. The book that it winds up being is not the book that I expected it to be once I first started reading it. And there's a true magic in that. At that point, once I realized I was getting these new experiences, and it was unfolding new twists and turns that I hadn't expected, I realized that this book that I was holding, getting kind of emotional actually, I realized that this book that I was holding was going to be a piece of me for the rest of my life. There are some books, many books, most books actually, that are fine, that get the job done. They may be fun, they may be okay, and if anyone asks if they're worth reading, you may shrug your shoulders and say sure. There are some books that are good, that you really enjoy, and then there are books that you love, that are all-timers, that you talk about and you think about and you really do love. Then there is a rarefied book. And, for me, if you're a longtime listener, you know the ones that matter the most to me. A book like It, that transformed how I happen to interact with storytelling and understand storytelling and what stories can be. I mean, for me, that's a foundational story for me as a younger reader. King Sorrow isn't transformational the way that It was for me, but it is special in its own way, because it's a rare book in the sense that it deals with images and archetypes and tropes that are familiar, but it feels fresh. And more importantly, for this grizzled, middle-aged reader who feels that he has consumed so much stories over the course of his life that it's hard to break through the sense of, I've seen it already. I truly fell in love with this book and its characters in a way that I hadn't in almost decades. When I was away from the book, all I could think about was getting back to it. As I was lying in bed at night, I fought sleep so I could squeak out a few more pages. I got to that point in the book where I needed to finish it. I knew that I needed to conclude it, but man, I was dreading saying goodbye to it. Joe Hill gives us this book with a great concept and then proceeds to allow us to live our lives as the seventh member of this group of friends in a relationship that spans decades. We feel the passage of time. We feel the changes in this friend group, in the love and the loss and the heartbreak, the loss of what could have been, the guilt, the shame, the betrayal, the pain, the hope, the forgiveness, the shorthand of communication that comes with long-term relationships and friendships, the complexity of dynamics within a group, the cliques within a group, the unspoken, the spoken, the perception of what we think our friends feel about us versus how they truly feel about us versus how we feel about ourselves. We are there every step of the way. And when the book jumps forward in time, though our characters change due to the passage of time, they're still recognizable. And like a friend that you can go with not seeing for 5 years, the second that you're together, no time has passed at all. The book does that. This is a book that's about magic, and what Joe Hill does, he pulls off a magic trick. It's a book about bringing ideas to life, whether that is pulling a dragon out of the long dark or a person that may never have existed, like the character of Hondo. And that's exactly what he does. As he does for his characters within the pages of this book, he does this for his readers with the book itself. He made this as I was reading it, it was as real and as important and heartfelt and meaningful as anything else in my life. So let me talk about the characters, because this doesn't work this doesn't work without the characters. And the book title is called King Sorrow, and the premise is about this deal that's made with the dragon, but it is not about King Sorrow. It's not about the dragon. The dragon actually is not in it that much. All right. It's, a comparable text in some ways when you talk about a group of friends that coalesce due to the proximity and their relationship with this supernatural creature. You think about the Losers Club, you think about Pennywise the Dancing Clown, and in some ways you think about this group and you think about King Sorrow. If you're to compare these two texts, the Pennywise has much more quote unquote screen time, page time than King Sorrow does. Joe Hill doesn't seem to be as interested in King Sorrow. And rightfully so, he's much more interested in the character formations and dynamics, and crafting these characters that are going to stand the passage of time. And I will read many, many books in the future. I'll watch a lot of movies. I'll read a lot of comics. I'll watch a lot of TV. But I don't know if I'm going to care about a group of characters as deeply as I happen to care about these 6 characters that I learned to love in the week that I spend reading them in the 800 plus pages that Joe Hill gave to us. When I started reading it, I was like maybe 100 pages in or so. A friend asked how it was, and this is what I texted. I said, so far, really good. You care about the characters right away. At this point in his career, though, his characters don't feel like real people. They're very stylized with big personalities. But I feel that comes from his work in comics, and he makes it work as a strength. A group of college friends makes a deal with a dragon named King Sorrow using a colonial-era Necronomicon-esque book made of human skin written by someone who had previously gone mad after making a deal with it. It's a big concept, and it's weird. It's about magic and reality, and I'm really digging it. It spans decades, so that'll be fun. I think that it'll have an it feel to it, of friendships across decades tethered by their relationships to a supernatural creature that's hunting them and haunting them throughout the years. Oh, and one of the characters said that the dragon has the voice that reminds them of Quint. So that's cool. So I mean, I think that in that initial, text that I wrote, I feel strongly about, I still feel similarly about that, except what I originally said about his characters not feeling like real people. At first, to me, I think that maybe they did seem big and stylistic. Um, but that I cannot in any way use that as a criticism. And maybe there is a sensational aspect to them as characters that might come on strong at first. And yes, maybe that is due to his work in comic books, which the characters kind of need to seem to be a little bit more mythic. In a book that's about archetypes, I think that works really, really well as a strength. And I think that Joe Hill, having spent so much time in the world of comics, with Lock and Key, and having comics be such an important part of his storytelling sensibilities, I think that him being able to bring that into his prose writing, I think that it actually really works. It's a really delicate and delicious blend of imagination, of this visual manifestation of storytelling within comic books and the visual manifestation of storytelling that comes within your own mind as you're reading these stories. I think that he has been able to transport these big ideas and big sequences and understandings of characters, and conflicts that can play out in a comic book and be able to include them now in his books in a way that really makes these characters pop. But what happens is that you even though they might have come on big for me, and maybe this was just me, or maybe that was just kind of the mood that I was in, but like what happens is that once you settle into the tone and the reality of this world that he is building, and you see the relationship with these characters and your relationship with the relationship of these characters, you fall in love with them. You really do. There are times when I'm reading a book, and I'll put the book down and I will immediately forget the names of the characters I had just spent 200, 300, 400 pages with. And they just become these like faceless, like bodies, in my memory. Not with this book, not with King Sorrow. Arthur Oakes, Colin Wren, Ally Shiner, Van, Donna McBride, Gwen Underfoot. These are our 6 main characters, each one with a distinct personality. We first meet Arthur, who is bookish, introspective, thoughtful. He has a sense of humor. He loves his friends. He loves books. He wants to be an academic. His mother is in jail. You understand why. You understand how he has been raised by a person who believes in empathy and compassion and kindness. And you get Arthur right away. You like Arthur right away. He's our introductory character. And soon after, you meet the others. The others in this friend group based around this college in Maine. We get Colin Wren, who is enigmatic, cerebral, wealthy, and basically has this home base for his friends to stay. It's their home base. It's their headquarters, so to speak, at the Briar. You have Ally Shiner. She's lovable. She's beautiful. She's innocent. She's permissive. She's in denial of who she is. It's tragic what Ally goes through in this book about her identity and her pushing down her identity for the majority of her life. She's a character that, because of this and for, her qualities of just loving so deeply the people around her, you love her so much. You've got Van, who's the jester of the group. He has that big energy, that you would recognize from, Stephen King books. he is in many, he's Arthur's best friend. They balance each other out. Like you need the straight man and you need the comedic relief. And the two of them just meld so well together. He is the heart of the group. You have his twin sister, Donna, who is the antithesis of Donovan. She's the muscle. She's hot-headed. She's as hot-headed as King Sorrow himself. She breathes fire that is just as hot. Her blood boils, and it comes from a place of tragedy and pain. All of the feelings that she has and the journey that we go on with Donna. It goes places, but Joe Hill made such a smart decision to have a character that can be recognizable in our world for a lot of the wrong reasons, but he bases it in a pain that you can't help but empathize with. Like you understand why Donna is the way that she does. You might not agree with her every step of the way, but you at least understand how that pain has fueled the personality that exists within this text. And then you have then you have Gwen, Gwen Underfoot, the underdog, the outsider of the group that is brought in, and you kind of get to see this group through her eyes. She's younger than them. She's not in the same social circle as them, but she is adopted by them, and she is as valued a part of their group as any of them. And she loves them. They love her, and we love Gwen just as much. You're introduced to these characters, each of them in their youth, and then proceed to live alongside them for their entire lives. It's truly remarkable. At first, you think that you're reading Arthur's story. And for the first half of the book, you could argue that it is, until Hill gives us the 100-plus page alley perspective on the airplane, which sets up the back half of the book, which focuses on a different character through their eyes. Allie, Van, Donna, Colin, with Gwen's story weaving through. And I'll talk about more of this in spoilers. Which actually, just let me get to now. Let me actually talk about the spoilers now. So, what's cool about this is I'll get into the spoilers in regards to the plot beats and the characters. But what's cool is the way that the role of magic is deployed. There's the long dark, and the way that we don't explore the long dark. It's such a cool sounding name, evocative. The long dark, where the dragons live. It's this ethereal world, kind of like the like Booyah Moon, or that pool of existence in Lisey's story and other tales, where magic resides. It's the place of imagination, and it's where you are able to pull, whether it's, I can't remember his name, Hondo, that fictitious character that never existed, or the dragon, or other dragons, whether it's King Sorrow or another. I just like the way that magic is deployed here, where reality, under the right circumstance, you can bend and wield, and where imagination becomes reality. The book wouldn't work if King Sorrow didn't work, and the rules of the bargain that you make with him. It's really, really well done. That just, he doesn't exist on Earth. Okay? He exists in the long dark. Once a year, you have to offer up a name. He will grow stronger. And every year on Easter, he will emerge into our reality and interact with our reality and slay and consume, burn the person that you have offered to him, and then retreat into the long dark for another year. However, if you need him before then, he has marked your soul on your body in the form of a dragon tattoo that you can then touch and pull him out of the long dark to assist you if needed. And so that's a ticking time bomb that you cannot wait to be deployed to see how it's used. And the reality is, because the rules are so clearly defined, you know it as a reader, the characters know it as characters, and the way that the characters, they are limited by these rules and the way these rules are used against them. It's so thoughtful. It is so thoughtful, especially the whole abduction of Van and Donna sequence and everything that plays out, because we know that the characters have to touch the head of the snake on their chest. When other characters find out about that, when the government organization finds out about that, and they tie up their hands in mittens, in these leather mittens, so that they can't touch it. It's so painful to read because there's so much power literally at their fingertips, but they can't touch their fingertips to that weapon that they can wield. It's such good storytelling. And what's so great about this is because the book starts with these characters falling in love with the characters, and the characters literally falling in love with themselves, and they making this deal with the dragon on a drunken whim, and the regret that they have to live with this for the rest of their lives, and the sacrifices that they have to make at the cost of their own humanity. That's all important and done well, but the first chunk of the book is them living in the aftermath of this and living with the rules. But it's not just 800 pages of that. Joe Hill needs to explore this within the reality of our world and what would happen if this happened in our world. And this is what separates it from something like It, where you also had a group of people that grew into adulthood and still have to confront this supernatural creature that seems to exist outside the purview of governments and authority and municipalities. It is able to exist in this world, and it's able to really impart its world and its reality on our reality and kind of shield the characters from the safety of the structures that we have within our reality. That's not the case in King Sorrow, and that's what makes it so fun to read. Let me talk about the airplane sequence, which is for me, this is when the book really took off into another zone, another realm. It just leveled up. So this sequence in which Allie is foolishly lured onto this plane by King Sorrow. I'm telling you, the 100 or so pages are as thrilling a sequence that I can't remember anything of the sort. I certainly can't remember anything as thrilling or action-packed in writing the way that I had been able to soak this up by Joe Hill. And I didn't know that it's something that I wanted. I didn't know in this book that I wanted seeing an airplane full of passengers during a dark and stormy night, watching a dragon fight fighter jets out of the sky. It's incredible. The tension of Allie getting close to this religious zealot terrorist character on the plane and trying to stop him and go through with her bargain of killing him. And if she's able to kill him before 12 o'clock on Easter morning, then she will live and all the passengers will live, because all King Sorrow needs to do is just knock the airplane out of the sky and his end of the bargain is done. And so him getting closer and closer and closer to our reality and seeing his shadow against the clouds and the screech of his roar, and the other passengers hearing this and being like, what is that? And seeing glimpses outside the window in the lightning flash. And then all of a sudden, like, fighter jets are whipping by. Why are fighter jets whipping by? If you were on a plane, you'd be freaking out too. And then thinking that you're seeing what you think that you're seeing, which is them attacking a dragon. Like, that's so wild and so high concept and like big budget action movie. I didn't expect it in this story, but it never comes at the expense of the personal nature of us wanting Ally Shiner to live. That's what it comes down to. Like, it's not about how cool it is, though it is awesomely cool. It's about Ally, and it's about Van in that moment professing his love to her and saying he's going to forgive her for her transgressions, which are transgressions. It's just her being who she is, but it's painful for him regardless. But my God, this sequence was so enthralling. And, you know, it for me, there's a movie that came out a few years ago, Godzilla King of the Monsters. As you know, I'm a lifelong Godzilla fan. I loved Godzilla growing up. And I was really excited when we were going to get new American Godzilla movies. The first one in 2014, I absolutely love. I was really looking forward to Mike Dougherty's follow-up when he was taking the reins, knowing that King Ghidorah and Mothra and Rodan were going to be in it. I did not like that movie by any means. I did not like it. I loved the trailer. I'll cry watching the trailer with the Somewhere Over the Rainbow playing. I did not like the movie. However, there was a Rodan scene where Rodan emerges from the volcano and starts flying, and he's knocking out fighter jets. It reminded me, I was thinking about that, and it's like the best part of that movie, and this is definitely a high water mark in this book. That sequence there of just seeing how King Sorrow interacts with our world. It's not some supernatural creature that comes in and mysteriously is able to do its job and then vanish and no one knows about it. No, it interacts with our world. And when it interacts with our world, especially in a modern day and age, he's a giant dragon and he's going to show up on radar, and people aren't going to know what that is, and they're going to assemble fighter jets and they're going to get glimpses of it, and it's going to raise questions and it's going to have consequences. And that's what's so interesting, is that what began as friends making a deal with this dragon have implications that they couldn't think through at the time. And me as a reader, I didn't know it was going to go in the direction that it does, where the government gets involved, because they have been monitoring this thing most closely since this flight fiasco that has claw marks on the side of the plane, which is great. But, you know, there's been, you know, they've done research and there have been sightings and spottings at times. And so just when that happens and you think that that is done, okay, and you think that actually they're able to sign an NDA and give the government what they want to hear and it's going to be hush hush, it flashes forward again, like 5 or so, maybe 10, I can't remember. It's a longer jump in time, I believe. And Van has written a book. And Van and Ally are married, they're living together, and an explosion occurs down the street. Like, what is going on? Like a bomb goes off. Then Van gets a call from Ally saying that they're coming for them. And then, oh my God, now it becomes a completely different movie. It becomes this, you know, whereas it had just been a monster movie in the sky, it's now this espionage, like, thriller, where Van has to get out before the government comes and gets him. And then it becomes very much like Firestarter, where they're running away from this organization very similar to The Shop, which, by the way, does get referenced in this book in a fun little Easter egg. And then the abduction of Van and the subsequent abduction of Donna, and this spotlight on these two, it's really tragic. And the limitations that they have on themselves, like I had said, knowing that they could detonate this explosive power at any given moment, it's at their fingertips, but they can't use it. It is tantalizing and it's heartbreaking and it's frustrating and it's wonderful storytelling. And seeing these two characters linked by blood and their souls are intertwined, they are twins, and they balance each other out. The way that they're kept close but separated from each other, it is heartbreaking and it's hard to watch. And through it all, we get to know Donna a little bit more, and we learn about her story and the tragedy there. And I'll talk about Donna in a little bit. But this sequence is so important to truly understanding Donna McBride and the decisions that she will make later on. And it's painful. This is painful. This is painful to see. And there's this moment that occurs when you realize that, Easter is going to be coming and something is happening to their abductors, and they start freaking out. And you realize that Colin, who is this tech mogul, he has been able to identify who their captors are, and he's saving the day from outside. And he has given King Sorrow their names. And it's this moment where, like, oh my God, that's incredible. And it's this ticking time bomb of just waiting until Easter. And now you cannot wait for Easter to come because you want King Sorrow to save the day. And then you love Colin for being able to do this, but you just need the characters to get through it. And then you know that their abductors, they have they're now animals who are being driven insane, and their backs are against the wall. And there's more danger there because our characters are less safe because their abductors are now going to do everything in their power to stop the horrors from being unleashed upon them. You don't know what they're going to do to Donna and Van. And that's where the most heartbreaking aspect of the book thus far happens, where Van realizes that the only way he's going to be able to save his sister is to kill himself and not give them any leverage. And Van, who had been the heart of this group, the soul, this jester who kept everything light, even in the face of having to sell their soul basically once a year. And he was the one that had kept Donna from becoming an inhumane monster herself, her very own version of a dragon. He sacrifices himself to save her, and it's devastating. It's devastating. And you then understand why Donna becomes the more Donna version of what she had been. It had already been in there. She had already been on that road. But the loss of Van, and Van being the tether to her humanity, allows her to fully become this remorseless, unsympathetic, judgmental, racist, hateful person who just lives in spite and venom and does not mind people being burned alive if it justifies her version of morality. You understand why she becomes what she becomes. But that sequence that's the airplane sequence, followed by the abduction of Van and Allie, and Van and Donna. What this does, it, like I had said, it breaks up what you thought it was, which was Arthur's story. And then now by highlighting a character 100 to like 200 pages at a time really makes it more of an ensemble. And then after that, we get Colin's perspective, where Colin and Arthur, now decades later, after having initially made the deal with King Sorrow, Colin and Arthur go on a quest to interact with a troll who has a hoard of valuables below the earth, that may include a sword that can then be used to slay a dragon. And it's two old friends coming together. And what's great about this book is that it shows these different, the different ways that the friends play off each other, and how friends get something else from each other in friend groups. Like Arthur's best friend had been Van, because Van had been, the life of the party, and that's kind of what Arthur had needed. And what Colin is, he's like the equal to Arthur, cerebrally, thoughtfully. There's these two deep intellectuals who have these still, quiet souls. Like everyone else is, Allie is ebullient, Donna is fiery, Van was the life of the party, and these two guys they're more like these sedentary, they're more like the rocks, right? And they recognize that with each other, and they appreciate that about each other, and the strength that comes from the two of them being able to be at ease with one another. It was a great combination to watch as they go into the earth. And they are coming again face to face with the supernatural in this troll that is passing as a homeless man living under a bridge, but and his humanity starts to slip away, and he's this horrible troll creature that's trying to betray them, and reality starts to slip, and they're attacked by imaginary spiders, and it's a thrilling sequence that leads to them getting to this treasure trove of junk. But there is a sword, and Arthur has the pure soul to unsheath it. So he's the Arthur Pendragon, and he is also defined by his love of, he has his very own Guinevere, right? Gwen Underfoot. I gasped. I really did. I gasped when it happens. When Colin takes the sword and stabs Arthur and kills him, kills someone he does care about, kills a friend, and says, Arthur, you didn't think you were the hero of the story, did you? And that's Joe Hill talking to us. And goddamn, was that mean? But it was great storytelling. Bravo, Joe Hill. Damn you, Joe Hill. And yes, our main character is taken off the board and our villain emerges. And it is heartbreaking because yes, we care about Arthur, but we also care about Colin. Don't forget that 100 pages before, Colin was our hero for saving the day. Colin rescued Donna. Colin set King Sorrow against these group of government operatives. He discovered who they were. He saved the day. They would be dead if it wasn't for Colin. And then here our hero is. We had generated so much goodwill to him, the quiet man being happy to kind of live on the periphery, taking more of like a heroic stance. He is now the ultimate villain by running a sword through the belly of our main character. And knowing now, and Joe Hill had teased this, with classic Stephen King moments like, and they would never see each other again. Like stuff like that. I think at one point she would never rest her shoulder on she would never rest her head on Arthur's shoulder again, or they would never fall asleep in each other's arms again. Something like that. There was some moments sprinkled through where you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you don't expect this. And it's nevertheless brutal when it happens. And then now the stakes are raised. We have someone who we're able to recontextualize the events of the novel. We know who burned down the bookseller's shop where they could have gotten the information needed to kill King Sorrow. We realize that Colin may not have been truthful about the people that they have selected to give to King Sorrow to make him more of a true villain. It's heartbreaking. It truly is, because not only do we lose our character in Arthur, but we also lose Colin. And Colin becomes that Lex Luthor figure. And that's the thing, is that, Superman had just come out this summer. We had Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. It was very hard to not visualize this repeatedly described bald, wealthy man as Nicholas Hoult. It was hard not to do this. I did ask ChatGPT. I said, ChatGPT, if we were to fan cast King Sorrow, who could play who? ChatGPT said Dan Stevens. And oh my God, what a great cast. Thank you, ChatGPT. That is great. That is a great cast. Actually did a really good job at casting them. They also recommended Lakeith Stanfield as Arthur. I really like that casting. They said Florence Pugh as Gwen. I don't see that. I can't help but think of Linda Cardinelli. I mean, she's constantly kind of described as like a Velma type of character. Linda Cardinelli famously played Velma. She seems very Lindsay from Freaks and Geeks in the early seasons. I can very, very, very much see her in that role very, very easily. Yeah, so some of that casting was really, really interesting. But the Dan Stevens as Colin Wren was great. But yeah, I mean, there are consequences here. And all of this springs, like, yes, originally from the consequence that you make a deal with the dragon, this is what happens, but also Allie boarding the plane. It's a domino effect. She boards the plane. If that hadn't happened, then the government wouldn't be able to put two and two together that they are involved, which means that the government wouldn't be able to come after them, which means that Van and Donna wouldn't be abducted. And if they're abducted, then Van wouldn't die. If Van doesn't die, then Donna doesn't go down the dark path that she does. If this thing doesn't happen, then it doesn't really spur Arthur to go seek out a way to slay the dragon. And Colin feels as though he needs to stop that from happening because he's benefiting from having a dragon buddy. So this is all, and ultimately all of this happens and it clears the deck for the true hero to emerge, the true main character, which is Gwen. And we realize now that this ultimately has been since the beginning to be Gwen's story. She was the outsider who comes in. She sees all of them. We see all of them through her perspective. And all of the conclusion has to rest on Gwen's shoulders and saving the day. So I've talked about Donna a little bit. Let me talk about Donna a little bit more. I think Donna is a fascinating character because she's very, she's written as a conservative, very MAGA inspired and coded, I guess, if you could say, she leans right wing, very, very right wing. And Joe Hill and his father are very famous liberals. But Donna, though her actions can be very ugly and you hate her at times for the way that she interacts with the characters that we know that she loves and we ourselves love. And even though she says hateful and mean things and takes action that causes unnecessary harm against people that she's never met, you understand it. And I think that that's really important in this day and age. Joe Hill made the conscientious decision and effort into always keeping her human and always understanding why she feels the way that she does. All right? Because this is a character whose hate and rage and bigotry and racism and venom, all of this comes from a place of pain and a place where, as a child, her best friend was abducted, and that left a scar on her soul that has been exploited by others, been exploited by Colin, and it, hardened her heart. And though she is capable of love, she gives in to hate more often than not. And again, it doesn't excuse her behavior. It doesn't excuse her actions, but it does explain it. And I think in a day and age where we are quick to point fingers and blame, I think it's very important that Joe Hill crafted a character that does not share the same opinions or philosophies as those around her within her social circle and her friend group. and she is not judged by them. She is still loved by them. She is sympathized and empathized with. She is ultimately forgiven by them. And she is, and they never stop seeking her redemption. I think that that's important. And I think that Joe Hill is saying that, in a book where our characters are fighting, literal dragons, we ourselves as a modern society, this isn't just a problem with our country, it's just society. We are constantly faced with fighting metaphorical dragons and dragons that have taken on societal structures and prejudices and imbalances of power and misuses of power, and they wear the faces of politicians or influencers or what have you, right? There be dragons. They exist. And it's important that the other dragon slayers that we stand with, that we remember that there are people with their own swords and their own shields who are fighting their own dragons, who have been scarred in their own ways, and that we are all human and we need to keep seeking our humanity. I think that that's important, and I think that Joe Hill does a wonderful job at always keeping this a recognizable character that we can understand, and she's not this cartoonish shrill of a liberal's version of what a Trump supporter is, right? She is a character with her own pain, her own motivation, her own strengths, her own failings. It's recognizable within a Trump America for sure. But he never shies away from keeping her human at all times. And I think that that's actually one of the strengths of this book. Another strength of this book is Allie's redemption. Redemption isn't the right word, but her overcoming her self-denial, her alcoholism, her acceptance of her sexual identity, and her rejection of Donna and Donna's sloppy, drunken control over her. That sequence where it happens, it is probably the most triumphant moment of the book, because all the other moments of triumph are he subverts expectations, and it's never as triumphant as you may want, with the exception of the skating scene, which really is magical and transcendent for multiple reasons. But this, from a character standpoint, this is as good as it's going to get. And you just pump your fist. Not only is she able to finally deny Donna and stand up against Donna and reject Donna's ugly, drunken, sloppy advancements, but she did so without giving up her sobriety. And that reveal that she didn't drink a drop the entire night, it's awesome. It's awesome. So knowing that Allie gets to live the life that she deserves at the end, with Tana, it's beautiful. It is. Not everyone gets a happy ending, but she does. And it's a really, truly wonderful thing. Another wonderful thing is the idea of the soul as a sword to be wielded. And just the way that happens. The conclusion of the book, you get this quasi reunion of the characters, without the more blatant, literal resurrection of Arthur and Van as ghosts. It's beautiful and it's sad because they're there in a version of themselves, in these ghostly forms of them at the last happy moment of all of their lives, being projected outside the skating rink, with Arthur spinning and twirling and hitting these kids with a lacrosse stick. It really is magical, and it just let the waterworks flow. having this play out as the dragon is swooping in and trying to get into the library where all of this truly began, and the ghostly versions of them playing out. It was a better part of their lives, and knowing that we're not going to get this reunion, this ghostly visitation from these dead characters. They're dead. They're gone. But magic exists, as has been established in this world. And it the way that it plays out, you know, it's just a reminder that death is permanent, which is sad. And it comes for us all, which is sad. But the love that these characters have and the kindness that they have, it transcends time, and the bonds that we form are strong enough to slay a dragon. Like, isn't that incredible? It's really moving to me. It's beautiful. Arthur's sword, Van's shield, Gwen taking one and Allie taking the other. It's really touching. So they're there in a form of themselves, in the love that still lives on, and the belief in that love and that friendship. And those are the weapons and those are the protections that they need in the face of a dragon. That's meaningful. That's meaningful. And it goes back to those themes of Katet, and these bonds that we form, and that we're never going to slay the dragon alone. We're never going to beat the clown alone. We're going to do so we're going to get by with a little help from our friends. I mean, it sounds cheesy, but it's true. We need to be a community. We need to rely on those around us. And we charge up magic power when we get to coexist with others for decades and decades and decades. And that power can be utilized to slay monsters. It's awesome. It's awesome. And what's great is that at that point, Colin had already been taken off of the board. Colin's reveal, it's sad. It's sad that a character that had been, like I had said, just 100 pages prior to his reveal, being like the hero. Like, it's not fully unexpected, but you didn't want it to happen, And then knowing that he had had his hooks in Donna for years and using her childhood trauma to shape her into an uncurious, hateful drunk that he can wield as a weapon, the way that Gwen, conversely is able to use the beauty and the love of Arthur as a weapon to slay a monster. Like, it's what Gwen is able to do is beautiful. What Colin does is truly awful. And I'm glad that he's taken off the board the way that he is. Not by the characters, not by his friends. He's not there in the final battle. He's murdered by the ghost of a man who never existed. That's so fitting, and then chased through the long dark after his death. It's a sad and lonely death for a character who betrayed his friends and us. So that's a very fitting end, and done really, really well. And then there's Gwen. The fact that Gwen and Arthur, are defined by the loss of the potential of what could have been, is this bittersweet twist of the knife that gives this book the power that it does. Yeah, they had a relationship, and yeah, they loved each other, but it was a young love, and the majority of the book's chronology takes place decades after the relationship had to be cut short. Knowing that they were both never the same after that, and that the love continued as deeply as it would have had they been able to be together, but destined to never be together. It's brutal. And it's what motivates you as a reader to want Gwen to kick King Sorrow's ass. But Gwen is never presented as that badass knight. She's tough, she's kind, she's fierce, but she's not superhuman. She's not a superhero. Joe Hill keeps the twists and turns coming, being shot and immobilized in the hospital just as they have the tools needed to slay the dragon, then receiving a magic healing potion. But that's not enough. There's not enough of the potion to save her. bleeding to death as she's fighting King Sorrow. The entire time, Joe Hill just keeps you guessing. And he'd already killed so many of our other characters. We know that no one, especially Gwen, is safe. But you fall so deeply in love with her that if he did kill her, you just might have to throw the book out the window. But thankfully, he's not that bloodthirsty, and she's able to have the dragon defeat himself. Listen, like I said, I don't have, a deep analysis here. I don't have quotes at the ready to read, and there's so many wonderful portions of the text that are, what does she say at one point that like that Arthur, or maybe it's Arthur thinking about Gwen, that she's like the first cup of tea in the morning and the first sip of wine after a meal. It's like there's just beautiful, beautiful passages in this book that are so meaningful. And I don't have any of them at the ready. Because I didn't sit down to actually, when I went to read this book, I didn't do so thinking that I was going to record a podcast episode about it. So I didn't do my normal thing where I'm taking notes as I'm going and doing all that. I just very quickly wanted to absorb it and be in it. But I think that I've done a fair enough job at being able to explain the reasons why I loved this book as much as I did. And I don't know, in this world where where everything is being turned into movies and television. I can, if it hasn't already been optioned, I can see it getting optioned, though I kind of just want it to live as it currently exists. I could see a multi-season show. I think there's a lot of challenges that would come with this. But regardless, this really is an amazing read. Please go out and read it. You won't be regretful that you've done that. It really is a wonderful reading experience that I will enjoy and remember fondly for years and years to come. So Joe Hill, still got it. And what's interesting is his, he definitely has a thing for fire. Between Horns and the Fireman and King Sorrow, the use of fire as in a supernatural means or way factor largely into his larger scope of stories, which is an interesting thing to unpack as this motif continues to reverberate and burn throughout his novels. All right, but that's not for me to explore at the moment. Maybe it's something I will do in the future. But if there's any analysis that you have, if you want to unpack that for me, you can definitely write into stephenkingcast at yahoo.com. stephenkingcast at yahoo.com. All right, everyone. That's all that I have for now. Please read King Sorrow. It's a wonderful novel if you didn't already get that from me. I hope that you are enjoying yourselves, whatever it is that you are doing right now. And may you have long days and pleasant nights. And I will see you here next time where MOON spells Stephen King Cast.